Nigel.
Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. This week we're looking at two flower families that bring late colour to the garden year after year. Carol is celebrating sanguisorba, both in the wild and in the garden.
There's no doubt that they have so much to offer, and the more and more we get to know them, the more and more of us are going to fall in love with them.
And we visit a Worcestershire plantsman that became besotted by echinacea and is now breeding them by the score.
I never know what I'm going to get until I've got it, and it's most exciting. It makes you get up every morning and go out quickly and have a look, see what else has come out.
The meadow that I sowed on the mound has grown. And grown and grown. There's this massive growth. Now, it's not all what I sowed. There are quite a few weeds that have been promoted into growth by the groundwork, and an awful lot of annual flowers, which are nurse plants. They're basically providing a cover while the perennials, which are much slower to germinate, get established. But it's doing exactly what I expected it to do. It's giving that body, that looseness, and this will be cut back before the end of autumn, and then next spring, the perennial grass meadow will start to really take its permanent shape. Now that's fine for the top, and this is going perfectly well, but the sides, as yet, are untouched. The banks of the mound are quite steep, which can make them awkward to plant, because if you've got a slope, the earth erodes. It all gradually moves south. Now, I've got some plugs, and they are ideal for this kind of mound planting, because if you sow seed, to get the moisture needed for them to germinate, you're effectively washing the seed down the slope. Right, let's start off with this, which is coltsfoot. It's got little yellow flowers that appear quite early in spring, probably about March here, and traditionally, it was used to treat coughs. Apparently, you could get coltsfoot sweets in the war because it was medicinal. It didn't count on the ration. Of course, the other really important factor of planting on a slope is that the roots will bind it and stop it slipping down. Particularly true of bigger, rather more woody plants, but any roots will do the job. Now, in amongst the coltfoot, lesser knapweed, which has got these bobbly plants. You often see it in old meadows. Pinky, purple, lavender colours, which all adds to the texture I'm trying to create. The plants I've put together are all adapted to grow well in heavy soil. Just because it's a slope and it will drain well isn't changing the nature of the soil, which is wet and heavy. Now, this knapweed is bigger than the coltsfoot, but will flower later. And there are bits of stone and brick in here. It doesn't matter that the soil is not particularly good. They won't mind that at all. Now, I'm adding in here some devil's bit scabious, which looks a little bit like the knapweed. It's smaller and got slightly pinker flowers. You can see how by using plugs very quickly, you build up this arrangement of plants that would be almost impossible to do if you were sowing from seed. It would take much longer. Now I'm adding a bonnet, which is a sanguisorba, which will grow perfectly well in these wet conditions. But Carol has been to see the greater bonnet, Sanguisorba officinalis, growing where it's most at home, in a meadow.
What do you think of when you think of a meadow? Beautiful, swaying green grasses, studded with brilliant colour. But at this time of year, the meadow takes on a different persona. It becomes much more subdued, buff and russet. And in amongst the seed pods of the umbels is one plant that few of us know. It's Sanguisorba officinalis, the greater burnet. This is a member of the rose family. It gets its name from the Latin, sanguis meaning blood and absorbere, to absorb, and it's long been used medicinally. At first sight, you'd hardly recognise it as a rose, but if you examine one of these leaves, you can see the similarity straight away. And as for the flowers, they're not individuals as you'd expect to see on a shrub rose or a hybrid tea. Instead, they're packed tightly together to form these lovely little bobbly heads. The greater burnet is a plant of flood meadows. That's its natural home. And yet, with a wholesale drainage of agricultural land, this lovely flower is fast disappearing. At the same time, thanks to the efforts of devoted nursery people and garden designers, its cousins from all over the world are enjoying a meteoric rise in their popularity. Brian Ellis has seen firsthand this surge of enthusiasm. He holds one of the country's finest collections of Sanguisorba. What do you think it is that's made Sanguisorba so popular and so suddenly as well?
They're so well behaved, they're easy to keep, don't need tying up, but they're transparent, you can see through them. They last for a long time, and with different varieties, you've got something that's going to flower from May through till October.
Yeah, that's not a bad run, is it?
No, absolutely.
And also, they're very relaxed sort of plants, aren't they? They're very informal.
True, and it means you can bring tall stuff to the front without imposing and stopping your view through the garden, rather than single statements.
Yeah.
Garden can otherwise look like a field of sheep.
With lots of dots.
Yeah.
These sort of bobbly flowers just remind me of officinalis.
But being a hybrid, the whole thing's got more vigour. It stands well. You've got bigger heads than the officinalis in the wild. But you've got so many contrasts. You can go from these bobbly heads to these more sort of elegant, streamlined.
Which one's this?
This is Ivory Towers.
Right.
It starts off, as it emerges, the foliage is fresh, clean, from very early on. Looks good right through.
Yeah.
And then even when it's going over, it still looks good.
So this is not straight canadensis.
No, this is a hybrid.
Yeah.
Shorter and flowers earlier. It loves it here because the Sanguisorba is like a rich, I wouldn't say wet conditions, but they don't like drying out too much, the same as the asters. But its parent, true canadensis, the species, is a wonderful thing. That's the first one I bought.
But now, how many
75,
Sanguisorbas?
80.
How many can you be in love with? One of the things that strikes you is whatever stage they're at, in full flower or in seed, they're beautiful.
Absolutely. Got them all seasoned. And you don't have to cut them down. They look just as good when they've died away.
Yeah, I can almost see that winter frost on them.
Yes,
you know,
very true.
along with your
The
grasses.
grasses, yes.
Oh, but this is just something else. Look at this. Lovely. So fluffy, you just want to touch it straight away, don't you?
Graceful. Keep it near the path. You can touch it as you go by.
Yeah. Which is it?
It's Haccusinensis lilac squirrel.
Right. Not a very romantic name.
No,
I'd
no.
compare it to seahorses. It's much more lyrical than that.
Lamb's tails. Lovely thing.
It looks Asiatic.
Absolutely.
You can tell, can't you, about plants?
Yeah.
But this one's just
It's
Beautiful.
just picking the right plant for the right place.
Brian's garden demonstrates, if you just take one chunk of it, that all of us can achieve that same sort of wonderfully relaxed kind of feel, that meadowy feel. One of the most important plants in creating this is surely the sanguisorba. It adds so much. Contrast it against these great big groups of heleniums. It adds rhythm and movement and texture. Mix it and mingle it with miscanthus, and another picture is created. Whether you see them lit by the afternoon sun, or their bobbly heads in silhouette against a hazy sky, there's no doubt that they have so much to offer. And the more and more we get to know them, the more and more of us are going to fall in love with them.
I'm planting another sanguisorba into the bank here. This is sanguisorba minor, the salad bonnet. And it's a plant really of chalky and limey downs. Well, obviously this isn't chalky, but you could say the slope represents a down. And as well as being good to eat, that's why it's called salad bonnet, it's one of those plants that stays green even in drought. So it'll keep this looking lush. Right, that'll do for the moment. We get lots of letters about grass, usually problems about moss, algae, lichen, fungi, slime mold. How do you deal with it? Well, most of these problems always come back to drainage, to a certain extent, light as well. And here at Longmeadow, we have dreadful drainage, a lot of shade, and to be frank, not very good grass. But that doesn't mean to say that we don't give it some attention. And if you want a good lawn, you've got to look after it. And this time of year is a really good moment because the grass is slowing down its upward growth, it's tittering, you've got the root system developing, so you can put work into it now and set up the grass so it's steady over winter, and next spring will grow away much stronger. First thing to do, whether it's a path or a lawn or whatever, is get a wire rake and give the grass a really good scratch. Now what you're trying to do is get all the thatch, the dead material, and remove it, because this is acting as a mulch and it's suppressing the grass growth. I'll just brush that to one side. Because having dethatched your lawn or path, now you want to address the problem of drainage. Grass needs a deep root system, which means a nice open soil, and also you want water to drain away. It likes lots of water, but it hates sitting in it. There are various means of improving the drainage. The simplest is just use a garden fork. Take a fork, stick it in and tread on it and wiggle it about. Because what you're trying to do is both get in deep and break the pan that is below the soil, and also make a nice big hole. And if you've got a small area of grass, this is completely effective and the best way to do it. However, the whole point is to try and make as big a hole as possible. Now, I've had one of these for a long time, and actually they're very effective. You put them on the ground, and using your body weight, stand on it, and this is so compacted it'll hardly go in. And in the process, you take out a plug of soil, making a hole. So we've improved aeration, we've improved drainage. This is fine for a small area. But if you've got a big lawn, I think you need something more powerful. And there's a real case for hiring a mechanical aerator. You can hire a kit like this for about £50 per day. Many simply have spikes that do the same job as a fork, but in a fraction of the time. But I've gone for hollow tines,
because removing plugs will be best for my compacted clay soil.
Now you can see that's quite a radical, dramatic thing to do, but it particularly in this case, because it's so compacted, it's breaking up the whole of this pan, which is below the surface. Actually, that's fine. That's not a disaster. And it doesn't matter how good your grass is, it needs this regular aeration. Having gone to all the trouble of taking out these divots, it is worth considering going an extra little bit further in the effort to improve your grass by adding sharp sand. If you spread sharp sand over the area that you've opened out, like this, and then, with a stiff brush, work it into the ground. You're not looking to make a layer of sharp sand on the surface. What you want is it inside the holes where the divots were taken out. And obviously some of it sits on the surface, but really give it a brush like this. It looks terrible. It looks disastrous. But believe you me, it will make a difference. And next spring, your path or your lawn will be a lot better for it. And I'm not suggesting you do this every year. You could probably get away with doing it just about once every 3 years, and that would make a big difference. Right, this will take a little while to do properly, but even if you're not repairing your grass, here are some other jobs you can be doing this weekend.
Chicory in its many forms is one of my favourite winter vegetables. It spends all summer developing a strong root that is fed by the green foliage, but this isn't what you eat. The root will start to grow new leaves that are deliciously bittersweet. So you must clear away the summer foliage to let light and air into this new growth. This operation will have to be repeated as the foliage continues to die back. September is the perfect time to take box cuttings. Look for nice straight new growth, at least 3 or 4 inches long. You can take them in potting compost and pots, but they will work just as well in a corner of the vegetable garden. A little bit of grit added to the soil will help drainage. Strip off the lower leaves and line them out in rows so you can weed between them next summer. Then just leave them and they should be ready to move to their final position in a year's time. Shrub roses can now be lightly trimmed back to avoid them being damaged by autumn winds. Simply take shears or secateurs and cut back the top third or so of the tallest stems. Then, in early spring, more major pruning can be done as necessary.
Echinacea. They are one of the most vibrant colours at this time of year, and yet what I really like about them is they combine intensity with elegance. There's a new one to me, which is hot papaya. I saw it first at Tatton this year and immediately loved it. And it is like an exotic bird crossed with a hallucinogenic shuttlecock, lighting up the border. I must get more. Now, Rob Cole in Worcestershire not only loves Echinacea, but he's done something about it. And he has bred scores of new varieties.
Before I retired, I was an architect and a landscape architect. And I used to design gardens for people in my spare time. And to have the opportunity to design my own on a whole acre of plot was just a dream come true. Diane and I planned the garden to be open. We have planted trees, but we wanted to grow primarily herbaceous perennials. We started to grow echinaceas. Echinaceas in the wild are prairie plants. They grow in wide open spaces. I think it is a very good garden plant. Late summer colour is often quite hard. There's heleniums and all sorts of other things, asters, that you can use in the autumn garden. But the echinacea bridges the gap, I think, between summer and autumn. And if you deadhead, they will continue until the first frosts. In 2004, the Americans introduced one called Art's Pride, which was a bright orange. Most echinaceas up until then had been purple or mauve, and everyone went mad for it. It was a wonderful, wonderful colour and such a good break. But unfortunately, most people who bought it eventually lost it, and we did exactly the same. And because it was so good, but so bad in the sense that it would readily die, I thought I'm going to have a go at raising some seedlings of this to see whether I can produce something better. From my very first plant, I raised 88 seedlings. It started me off on this long road to what is now over 10,000 seedlings since then. I don't do the pollination or the cross-pollination. The bees do it all. All I do is collect the seed, sow it, and then select the best of the seedlings. Once I've found something that is worthy of garden use, the only way to propagate it is by division, which is a pretty slow process. This is the original Art's Pride, a plant that I've managed to keep going in a pot on the nursery. You can see that it has this long, thin leaf, which the slugs love. See the holes in it? So what I'm looking for to improve it is something like this seedling here, which is one of my seedlings from this year, which already has a little red sticker in it to tell me that it's a good plant. And if you compare that with the original Art's Pride, you will see what I'm trying to do. There are the two together. So you're getting a much fuller flower in this one. Here is a wonderful yellow. The great thing about this is that it has the Echinacea purpurea leaf, a wide leaf rather than a long, thin one that the slugs so love. And if you compare it with this, which is from the same batch of seed, but that is such a better plant. It is a double row of petals, maybe even a triple row of petals. So that gives you a much fuller flower, which is probably much better commercially. The passion for trying to raise new echinaceas has got to rather a dizzy height. Of course, they only flower in July, August, September, but every morning I can come out during those months and find another seedling has opened up. Just occasionally a flower that is absolutely wonderful, a really bright, vivid colour. And I never know what I'm going to get until I've got it. And it's most exciting. It makes you get up every morning and go out quickly and have a look, see what else has come out.
I do think echinacea are perhaps the best plants of the season. But I'm now thinking about next year and seeing how I can get some really intense colour into early spring. This year, I found myself getting a huge amount of pleasure from alpines. They're new to me, but I'm learning to adore the way that they pack so much into these miniature plants. This is not their season. They've done their thing by now. I want to make the most of next spring's performance by adding to my growing collection. I've got some alpine bulbs for next year. Now, we think of iris as being these big, voluptuous flowers that bridge that gap between spring and summer. And of course, bearded iris are like that. But the alpine iris, particularly Iris reticulata, have the same intensity of colour, but they're small. And they come from areas where it's really cold and dry in winter and baking hot in summer. And they flower just as the snow melts. And the way I like to see these, and I guess it's true of all alpines, is they're jewel-like. Although they are very hardy and will take a lot of cold, what they hate is winter wet. And so a good way to grow them is in a pot or a pan. These sweet little alpine pans are ideal. Now, the bulbs look like any old bulb, and I can't tell you how I love it when you get a delivery of bulbs coming through. And they're these little flower bombs. I mean, that looks ordinary enough, but I know that's harmony, an intense blue flower. Now, what they need, like all alpines, is really good drainage. So I've mixed up equal amounts of leaf mould and a peat-free compost, and then as much again of grit. So it's 50% grit, which creates a really free-draining mixture. And even if you just use ordinary potting compost, add as much again in volume of grit. You won't get away with just a normal compost. Put a bit in the bottom. And now I will plant about 5 or 6. There we go. And then cover it. There we are. Absolutely nothing to see. But what I know is come next March that we will have this exquisite little group of about that tall of intense blue flowers. Now, I could put this somewhere sheltered. Cold frame is ideal. A cool greenhouse is good too, but it doesn't need heat. These are not tender plants. They just don't like being soaking wet. Water now, and that's all they need. Of course, you don't need a lot of space to do this. One little pot can give you exactly the same pleasure as a large group. Well, that's it for this week. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. Now, we do tend to think at this time of year that winter's coming and the garden's collapsing and it's all getting very autumnal. But actually, if you stop and have a look, the garden's looking great, full of colour. And that colour's all coming from a group of plants, tend to come from nearer the equator, that don't respond to the fading light, but are really happy as long as it stays warm. And it's still really mild here at Longmeadow, so you've got cannas, zinnias, dahlias, cosmos. The fuchsias are having a really enthusiastic second flush of flower, and they'll go on flowering until we get the frost. So in today's programme, we're going to celebrate what's looking great about the garden, as well as getting on with jobs to keep it looking good right through into next spring.
This week, Joe visits the eminent furniture designer, John Makepeace, who's created his very first garden and has used only grasses.
Wow. What I really like is the graphic way you've used these plants. You know, big bands of them and drifts of them and blocks of them. A real designer's eye coming through there.
And Carol goes to RHS Wisley to celebrate a 60s classic. Heathers have long fallen out of fashion, but as she discovers, can still look fantastic.
I think the thing that people really forget is these are so versatile. They're completely hardy. normally got flowers from autumn right through to spring, and they're a great foil for other plants.
And as well as clearing my greenhouse and planting some crops for winter salads, I'm going to be moving some plants around so that they will look at their very best. Come on. The lime walk is one of the key parts of Longmeadow. It's the first piece we made, and it is the link, the main link from the house to the garden. So it's always been very important. It changes across the seasons, of course. You know, it starts off quite open, and then you get the bulbs coming through, and particularly tulips look great. And then as the foliage grows on the limes and the hornbeam hedges underneath them, it gets darker and darker. But over the 20 years since we first made it, what's interesting is the roots have grown, and it's not only got darker because everything's got bigger, but also it's got much, much drier. So the planting has changed. We started by putting ferns in, and we've got two types of Dryopteris, Felix Mass and Aphenis. They've been in about a month, and they're looking great. The next phase is to add to that planting. And at the moment, it's a bit bitty. So I want to simplify it, move some plants, add a few others, but adapt it to the way that it is rather than what it used to be. Now, cyclamens adapt well to shady places. They're Mediterranean plants, but in the Mediterranean, in the natural home, they tend to grow down in the valleys, in slightly moister, more shady areas. And what they like is really well-drained soil, but also they don't mind quite high rainfall. And they're certainly going to get that here at Longmeadow. So what I'm doing is moving the white cyclamens to the writing garden, and I'm going to be planting more pink, just to simplify it down and relish what the pink cyclamen are doing. Now, these are cyclamen hederifolium, and they're good and hardy. Not all cyclamen are. So if in doubt, go for them. Cyclamen coum, which flower a little bit later in winter, will also survive anything that the weather can throw at them. And now is a really good time to plant cyclamen. You can grow them from the dry tubers, but it's difficult and they can be very slow. Much better to get a plant in leaf or in flower and put it into the ground. And you can move them at the same time. And the idea is not to damage the tubers, but just dig them up, which is why I'm fiddling around a bit here, and transplant the whole thing. Sit right in amongst the roots of the tree. There she comes. There we go. Out she comes. There we are. And look at the way you get these coiled stems there. And of course, really beautiful bent back petals, like arms flung back, and of course, open to pollination. Get in under that. There we are, and that's got a nice root system. Cyclamens spread really fast. They spread by seed, and you put a few plants in, spread them a couple of feet apart, quite quickly they'll form a solid display. Another very good reason for delaying till this time of year is I had to wait and see what colour the flowers were, because the foliage of a white-flowered cyclamen hederifolium and a pink-flowered one looks identical. And the ones I'm going to plant have got a really strong, slightly magenta touch to the pink that will shine out of the dark. Now, a plant like that costs a couple of quid. It's the price of a cup of coffee. So they're good value. They will last for years and years, they will spread really easily, and they will give you colour at a time of year when a lot of other things are starting to fail, and also they will thrive in a position where a lot of other things simply won't like it at all. There's another plant I want to move now, which won't flower until next spring, if it flowers at all. Now, the reason why this may not flower is because it's not happy. It's a camellia. It's called Cornish snow, and it has real charm. And if it had flowered well here, it would have fitted in very nicely. But the problem is, it's too dry. The shade from the trees, the moisture is being sucked up by their roots, the rain isn't getting through, and for a camellia to form its buds properly in late summer, it needs plenty of moisture then, August, September and October. Now, this little plant has hardly grown in the couple of years it's been here, so it shouldn't have too big a root system. If it was really big, I'd have to cut it down. Now, this is a good time to plant evergreens. With deciduous plants, you wait till they're dormant. The leaves fall off, then you move them. But evergreen plants are never dormant. October is about the nearest they ever get to dormancy. They're not growing, they're not producing flowers, so by moving them now, you've got the safest time. That has got a very small root ball. The roots have gone down and it's bone dry. The top layer isn't too bad and you've got fresh roots coming through. I want more moisture than that. So I'll move this from the spring garden here to the writing garden. And of course, the theme of the plants there is white and frothy. So when it gets established, when it gets happy, the white frothy flowers will be perfectly at home. Now, when I was a child, heathers were very fashionable. They were planted everywhere, particularly as a labour-saving plant. And then they went out of fashion, and I guess they've never really come back in. But Carol has been out to celebrate them and see them at their very best.
Despite the wholesale urbanisation of our islands, there are still wild places to be found. Heathland and moorland. And more than anything else, one plant in particular personifies this sort of place and creates that special magic. Here on Chatley Heath in Surrey, our native heather, Calluna vulgaris, stretches as far as the eye can see. The poor, sandy, acid conditions here suit it down to the ground. Mankind's always had a close association with heather. It's been used for thatching, for fuel, for bedding, and for making brooms. In fact, the Greek word Calluna means to brush or clean. But just a stone's throw from here is a wondrous collection of all sorts of different heathers. RHS Wisley holds the National Collection of Heathers. The work here helps preserve this fascinating group of plants.
I think the thing that people really forget is these are so versatile. They're completely hardy. They will give you a long season of interest. You've normally got flowers from autumn right through to spring. They hug the ground, so minimal weeding, and they're a great foil for other plants.
I mean, I suppose so many people, me included, associate them with that kind of era, you know, where they were used so extensively and they were just an excuse for doing no work. Shoving a few conifers and that was it.
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, I don't remember that era, and all I see now is...
Of course you don't.
It's something like this, Daisies. Huge flowers, really good, clean leaves there.
So how many different heathers have you got in the collection?
The collection's massive, and we've got just under 1,000 different heathers out here. And that's made up of 3 main groups of Callunas, Ericas, and Daisies.
I just love the way the sunlight plays with this Calamagrostis and it just rises up out of your heathers. You're not expecting it, are you?
No, it's quite an unusual association. You wouldn't maybe always expect to have grasses through heathers. In the wild, it does actually happen.
And you've got more of it over here too, haven't you? That's a beautiful planting.
Yeah, it's really nice. I mean, it just shows we're just doing something a bit different with the grass seed heads. And then I just love those dwarf pines. I mean, they're like heads of broccoli. They're absolutely fantastic.
Look at the variety in here.
Yeah, you really, I mean, this is a perfect example. This is one of the Callunas in front of us. This is Helen Gill. Really nice frozen grey foliage, and it keeps that colour throughout the year as well.
Yeah. I think it looks very sort of misty, especially now, covered in these white flowers. I mean, when do most of them flower, the Kalunas?
You kind of got into late summer, early autumn time. It's quite a long period.
Right. And is this one of the ones that must have acid soil?
They do better on acidic soil, and that's similar for the Daboecia as well. They are better with a slightly lower pH. But a thing to really illustrate this that I really love is you can see, I mean, this has been in flower for weeks already, and you can see the flowering spike as it extends with more flowers.
There's a score of flowers on that little piece, isn't there? Just wonderful.
Third group is the ericas. They'll kind of take us late winter into spring, and they've got a much more needle-like leaf. Just give them plenty of water when they first go in, and they should give you a good show.
Now, heathers are some of the easiest plants to propagate. You can take little tip cuttings and they'll root within weeks. But if you want a lot of plants fast, why not try this? This is drop layering. Now, this is a plant that Matthew was going to do this to anyway, but I've beaten him to it. This heather is old and leggy, but rather than risk cutting it back, it's perfect material for a very particular method of propagation. I've just got to make a much deeper hole to replant the heather. So I'm making sure that each of these shoots is in close and intimate contact with the soil. You mustn't leave air pockets. And within a matter of months, these shoots will have produced new little roots close to the surface. Wait till the spring and you'll see bright new growth coming up. And that's your sign to move some of the soil aside. Get in with your secateurs, sever those little pieces, and you're going to have dozens of new heather plants. What the heather garden here at RHS Wisley demonstrates is that heathers are no longer stuck in the 60s. Providing you use them creatively, they're plants with a bright future.
Even if I wanted to grow heathers here, I couldn't, or at least not easily, because this soil's pretty neutral, which of course is perfect for cyclamens, because cyclamens will grow in slightly acidic, slightly alkaline soil with great happiness as long as they've got good drainage. So I'm adding drainage to the planting hole here. And remember that they are tubers, so they do need to sit a couple of inches below the surface of the soil, and then the leaves and the stems will go up through. Of course, I'm being really careful with this plant because I don't want to damage the flowers. Now I've bought the camellia here. Camellias, like heathers, like an acidic soil. But my soil, which is neutral, means that I can grow camellias. I just need to treat it with a little bit of special attention. Now the first thing to do is dig a generous hole. And I'm taking out more soil than I need to because adding leaf mould will help the plant. Camellias like a nice loose root run. Leaf mould is the perfect material. And if you can't get any, then use something to lighten the soil but not feed it too much. So definitely not manure, maybe some garden compost. And I'm going to plant that not too deep. If anything, I want to be slightly proud of the soil. So if I lift it up a little bit and then fill back under it, that will do. Well, let's hope that it's happier here in its new home than it was in the spring garden. I've still got one really important job to do, which I'll do sometime between now and next March, of giving it a generous mulch of the ericaceous compost. But here are some jobs you can do right now.
Any cuttings that you took in summer will have established roots by now. However, they will need potting on into a richer compost. Pot them individually and put them somewhere protected, and then leave them there over winter. Next spring, they'll be ready to grow again strongly and plant out. By planting spring cabbages now, their roots will get established while the soil is still warm. You won't see a lot of top growth before next spring, but when they do grow, they'll grow fast and be ready to harvest in April or May. Now is the time to move alpines growing in terracotta pots or pans. They don't mind cold weather, but they hate wet. So put them somewhere dry with as much light as possible and lots of ventilation.
I've got a letter here from Chris Goodwin at Stoke-on-Trent. And he says, will it do any harm in moving some perennial plants at this time of year? I'd like to move some in a border that I planted up earlier this year to make space for bulbs next spring. And they include Rebecca goldstrom, Miscanthus zebrinus, daisies and monarda. Now, the fact that they're young plants and haven't got too established is good. It means that they will move more easily. And as a rule, any herbaceous perennials can be moved in autumn. Not a bad thing to do at all. However, you also mention Miscanthus, and it is a really bad idea to move grasses in autumn. Wait till spring, otherwise there's a real risk. Not only will they not do well, but they may well die on you. Anyway, this is the season to relish grasses. I think they're amongst the loveliest thing in the autumnal garden.
And it seems that I'm not alone. Joe went to visit the world-famous furniture designer John Makepeace, who shares my passion for grasses. He and his wife Jenny have his and hers gardens that reflect their very different styles.
Jenny's gardened for years, and on her side of the garden, the style is typical country cottage. But John, a relative newcomer to the joys of gardening, has other ideas.
Pots are great, eh?
It's quite fun, isn't it?
Is this your sort of thing, John, gardening-wise?
No. No, I mean, Jen is such a plants person, and I'm not.
Do you appreciate
I'm appreciative, I can admire it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Jenny, what do you think of John's garden next door, then?
Well, I think it's brilliant. I mean, I really mean that. There was a moment when I thought I'd kill him because I wanted that space. And then he really got into it, and I thought, no, this is a very determined man, I'd better go with this. But no, I think it's a triumph, really. For somebody who doesn't garden, it's a triumph.
Jenny's cottage garden is a riot of blooms, but John takes a very different approach.
Wow, this is very, very designed, and yeah, it looks very smart, I have to say. It wasn't what I was expecting at all. Why grasses?
Well, I think I like their purity, and I'm not fond of seeing grasses mixed in with other plants. You know, Jenny tries to get me to plant other things in here, or has tried, and I've said, no, I actually want to see these forms without that compromise. Yeah. What I really like about them is their architectural quality. Yeah. And so in selecting grasses, everything had to have a very distinctive form. Most of these plants came into the garden in tiny pots. They're beginning to mature now, they're becoming stronger. They're spreading, and of course there's going to come a point at which I'm going to have to thin. I'm not looking forward to that.
That's called gardening.
Yeah, I know.
Because there are other plants in this garden, and you've got the evergreen structure. I mean, you've got a pretty good dystopiary. Yeah. I mean, it sets the tone, doesn't it?
Doesn't it? Yes, yes.
Why do you whisper, green grass? Why tell the trees what ain't so? Whispering grass.
What I really like is the graphic way you've used these plants. You know, big bands of them and drifts of them and blocks of them. A real designer's eye coming through there. Which are your favourites?
This is a delight. It's Molinia arundacea, transparent.
But the way you see through it, it's absolutely stunning, isn't it?
I mean, it's just so beautiful.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
The poa is a very strong form, and I like that. It starts the season very clipped and tight,
Yeah.
And then it springs these shoots, and over the summer it becomes a really big spreading plant. And then the miscanthus, of course, are wonderful structurally, as is the steeper gigantea, which forms the avenue against the wall.
A whole hedge of them, really.
Yes.
Creating
Yes,
the seclusion as well.
Whisper in grass, don't tell the trees, 'cause the trees don't have to know.
This fantastic bridge, which
Well, it's quite...
this is your forte when it comes to design, this sort of thing, isn't it? It's beautiful. And what I like about it is right at the sort of hump, the high point, we are looking down. It gives a whole new perspective on the garden because we're looking down on the planting,
Yes.
into the pond area.
It's like the tenuissima look lovely from above.
And that's the way it should be planted, in my opinion, a big block like that. It creates that texture, doesn't it?
Yes,
That fluffiness.
It's always alive, and it's never still.
Can we cross your bridge?
If you
Is
dare.
that all right?
If you dare.
There's no handrails. Is this a summer house or studio?
No, it's not a studio. It's a place for switching off rather than working.
Yeah, it's fantastic from here as well, just looking at the banks of the grasses and the variation of height and feeling like you're really in amongst the planting here. It's gorgeous.
Yes. It's one of the benefits of having a clear foreground, because you can get so much more background. The water enables you to see so much more of the surrounds without any break.
And if someone asked you to design their garden, and you being the garden designer, would you take that on board?
I'm not sure. They'd be very brave to do it.
And it'd have to have grasses in it, right?
By planting only grasses, John's made a very bold move. What he's achieved here with this limited choice of plants is truly inspiring. It's hard to believe that this is his first garden, but John's strong eye for design shows in every detail.
Overall, it creates a textural tapestry and a very strong mood. Grasses don't have to play a supporting role in the garden. They can be the stars themselves.
Now, the tomatoes are still ripening, but very slowly. And the chances are that any tomato like this one that's still completely green is not going to ripen this year. So what I do every October, and I'm going to do now, is say, OK, this lot have done their stuff, they've been fantastic, but it's over. Clear them out of the way, then use the bed to plant up some salad crops, which I've been raising since midsummer. First thing to do is to pick what tomatoes we've got, and I will eat the ripe ones and put most of the green ones to ripen in a drawer or make green chutney out of them. Now, cut them all free. Now, I've been walking all over this as we've picked the tomatoes and tied them, we've trod on the bed. It's compacted. So although ideally you don't stand on a raised bed at all, if you do, you've still got to dig it over to get rid of the compaction. Right, that's dealt with the compaction and helped the soil structure. But this bed has worked really hard. It's produced pounds and pounds of tomatoes, great big tomato plants, and it needs some nutrition. The best thing you can do to reinvigorate a soil, give it new life, is give it a dressing of compost. I have here some salad rocket, which was sown at the end of July, beginning of August. Rocket's really good for a winter salad. It doesn't mind cool weather, and it will grow in low light levels. It stops growing round about the beginning of December and then starts growing again the beginning of February. So it's a good idea to get it established in October in good time. I have some endive, a type of chicory, which you just eat like a salad crop. That will grow well throughout winter. And a lettuce here called deer's tongue, which I like to eat very much. It's not particularly hardy, but it does well. You can also buy essentially summer lettuce. These are cos grown in plugs, which won't grow a lot over the winter, but will give you a picking of salad crops. The other good tip is to simply buy cut and come again lettuce like this, which you can get from the supermarket, and if you take them out of the tray, they're not designed to be replanted, but they will perfectly well, you can break them up and plant them in groups, and they will grow away. So, whatever you choose, use the space. That's the important thing. Don't waste any of the space and give yourself some fresh salad material, even on the darkest days of winter. Now, you would much rather have a fresh ball than a fresh salad, wouldn't you? In the wheelbarrow, out the wheelbarrow. In the wheelbarrow, out the wheelbarrow. The fun goes on and on. Now, I would stress that this is something to get on with. Try and do it this weekend if you can, because the longer the plants have to grow and get a better root system, the more you'll be able to harvest from them. And that growth rate will slow down dramatically over the next month. Well, the rain is still falling. It's nice and dry here in the greenhouse, so I know what I'm going to be doing for the next hour or so. I'll see you back here at Longmeadow next week. Till then, bye-bye. Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. And a very, very wet Longmeadow. It's been raining here for days, and everything is absolutely sodden. But the rain stopped. It's still nice and mild, and we may be sodden, the ground may be skiddy, but we're unbowed. It's been a bumper year for berries, and this week Carol is revelling in all the rowans that are brightening up so many gardens.
You can easily see why people would just fall in love with these and want as many as they could have.
Absolutely. I mean, look at that colour. That's just stunning, isn't it?
And Joe is visiting a suburban Bristol garden, which is home to an amazing array of tropical plants.
I'm intrigued because it's one of those gardens that really makes you want to explore. Oh, it goes right back.
Yeah, come on through.
Oh, wow.
And I shall be mowing the meadow that I sowed earlier this summer and making some really snug winter protection for tender plants.
Come on.
Last week, as part of the revamp and simplification of the planting here in the Lime Walk, I moved the white cyclamen to the writing garden. I left the pink cyclamen and bought a whole load more and now have planted them up. What I'm trying to do is plant a nice simple strip of plants along this long narrow path that will thrive in what has become a very shady and actually surprisingly dry set of beds. Now, it is important when you plant cyclamens outside to stick to hedropholium and cyclamen coum, unless you're in a very sheltered area. I've got some in pots here, which are Persicum varieties. And these are absolutely lovely. You see them in garden centres everywhere, but they're not fully hardy. They're only hardy down to about -5. So grow them outside in pots and then bring them indoors and enjoy them as a houseplant for the rest of the winter. Now, something that's been cropping up, self-seeding, is pulmonaria, and it's come from the spring garden. And I love pulmonarias, but either I want it all the way down or not at all. And I've decided not at all. So I'm digging it out, and I'm going to move it, and I'm going to propagate from it. Now, pulmonaria, of course, flowers in early spring, February through till April, and has a sort of gaiety and modest charm, which I love. The important bit is the root. If you can get as much root out as possible, you have the best chance of the move being a happy one for the plant as well as for you. There we go. Now, the top growth is not going to give me any propagating material. It's the roots that I want. Now, the easiest way would be simply by division. Just pull a plant apart, teasing it, and there we have two pulmonarias, and they can be planted out straight where you want them to grow, and they will flower next spring, and that's hunky-dory. However, what I want to do is grow as many as possible. And if you see here, this is all one, it's all joined, but there are very clearly 1, 2, 3 separate sections. And so all I have to do is cut them free. If I cut the knife in there, that's given me 2, 1, 2, and I can get 2 more from this, cutting there. So even that, which is a very small section of root, will almost certainly grow a new plant. And this is normal potting compost. Pulmonarias are tough plants. They really don't need much special treatment. The one thing they do prefer is a bit of damp. And funnily enough, the ones growing that I've moved along the Lime Walk were in very dry shade. So they were never going to prosper. They like damp shade is ideal for them. So if I cut off the top, like that, we don't need that. So I just have the section of root, pop that in. That will be fine. And again, this one. Take the top off. Pulmonarias come in blues and pinks, and you can have the same plant starting out blue and turning pink. Some blues are better than others. Some pinks are better than others. There's Sittinghouse White, which is bright white flowers. A lovely plant. I've got them in the spring garden. But there's no way of knowing what these hybrids, which have spread, will be. Although there's bound to be some bad surprises amongst this lot, there might be a gem. And that's something to look forward to. They are going to sit there for the next 6 months. And the reason I'm leaving them is I want to see them flower. Most of them should flower next spring, but some may not flower till 2015. But I'll be patient, and then the really nice ones I'll put in the spring garden, and the ones that don't quite work so well, I'll find a home for somewhere else. One of the great pleasures of this time of year are the rose hips. One of my favourite of all is Rosa Moisei, which has the flagon-shaped hips. Worth growing for those alone, I think, although the flowers are great too. They're single, they're sort of intense vermilion red, and they're particularly like the way that they're spangled evenly across the shrub, and in this case, great big shrub at the back of the grass borders. Of course, it's been a good year for every kind of fruit and berry. And Carol is out looking at the rowan, whose fruits not only look fantastic, but are immersed in myth and legend.
Many trees loom large in our folklore, And several of them have real magical significance attached to them. None more so than the rowan, the mountain ash. It rivals holly and hawthorn in terms of the myths and legends, the superstitions that surround it. In Scotland, there are foresters and woodsmen who refuse point blank to cut it down. You often see it planted outside dwellings, where it offers the inhabitants that protection from malevolent spirits. But this is its real home, out on the bare, bleak mountainside. It loves that thin, acid soil and it just clings to the rock. It's incredible, really, that such a dainty and delicate tree could be so robust. Its real bounty is its berries, great big bunches of brilliant sealing wax red berries. Some of them stay on the branches and some of them tumble in amongst the heather and the wimberry. Wonderful food for all those gangs of fieldfares and redwings who'll pass through here. Sustenance to carry them on through their journey. Sorbus orchiperia is our own mountain ash, but there are sorbus from all over the Northern Hemisphere, and thanks to the pioneering spirit of plant explorers, many of them have been brought back to this country, where they've graced our gardens ever since. There's a national collection of sorbus at an unusual place. The Jodrell Bank Observatory in Cheshire, part of the University of Manchester. The telescope was the life's work of Sir Bernard Lovell. He was also a keen botanist. After building the telescope, he founded 2 national collections. So Sir Bernard Lovell was absolutely passionate about trees, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. He even started his own arboretum in his back garden, just 3 miles away from here.
Yeah. So how did this national collection come about then?
Well, back in the late 70s, when the national collections first started, they approached us to see what we had here, and our 2 biggest collections were Malus, the ornamental crabapple, and Sorbus, the rowans and whitebeams.
And how many are there in the collection then?
We've got over 100 trees, so there's plenty to see.
You can easily see why people would just fall in love with these and want as many as they could have.
Absolutely. I mean, look at that colour. That's just stunning, isn't it?
Which one's this?
This is Sorbus Eastern Promise.
Right.
One of my many favourites. I mean, from this lovely sort of corally, bright pink, we've got Xanthocarpa, which is a vibrant orange, and then we've got this lovely pure white Sorbus Pratii, which is quite, it's very, very bright, actually.
Distinctive.
Yes, absolutely.
I suppose some people with small gardens are quite worried about putting a tree into them, but with Sorbus you really can accommodate them, can't you?
That's right, you can. I mean, look at the size of this tree. It's a perfect small tree. Sir Bernard was very passionate about sharing information about trees, and a lot of the trees here, a lot of the Sorbus, were chosen because they were small trees and ideal for small gardens.
Yeah. This looks a bit like a cross between the hawthorn and the Sorbus.
It does, doesn't it? This is the wild service tree, or Sorbus terminalis.
Yeah. And it's got these glorious fruit.
Yes, it has to blet first after the... So once the frost has hit it, it then softens and becomes quite sweet.
Yeah.
And tastes almost like stewed apple.
Bit like medlars.
Yes,
Yeah.
just like medlars, yeah.
I mean, they say that all Sorbus are edible, but you've really got to be careful, haven't you? You shouldn't go eating them.
No, not at all. You can get quite an upset stomach by eating berries.
Yeah. Mind you, this sounds good. I think I'll have to come back after the frost.
Yeah, do.
I mean, if a Sorbus could choose where to live, it'd be out in the open, wouldn't it? In light, sandy soil or on the side of a rocky crag.
Yes, absolutely.
Bit different here.
It is, certainly is. We've got heavy boulder clay here,
Yeah.
which is why some of the rarer species get grafted onto a strong rootstock like Sorbus orchiperia.
Yeah.
And here we've got this Sorbus fulnieri, which is a beautiful white beam. And you can see here where it's been grafted,
Yeah.
just down here. So all this is Sorbus orchiperia that's coming up. You need to be
Yeah.
able to pull it out to destroy its roots. So really, really give it a good pull.
And if you can't and your back's bad?
Get your secateurs out and cut as close to the root as you can.
Yeah. Before I leave this wonderful, enchanted place, there's one tree in particular that I want to show you. This is Sorbus Joseph Rock. A scientist, Dr. J.F.C. Rock, discovered it in China. He was actually looking for a cure for leprosy. But he came across this tree and obviously he got sidetracked. What is it about it? It's these glorious, glorious yellow berries that change gradually from very pale cream right through the winter to deep yellow. And at first, they're accompanied by the foliage, which turns to rich crimsons, oranges, russets and reds. And even when all these leaves have tumbled to the floor, the berries remain and persist right the way through the winter. It personifies what's so marvellous about Sorbus. They're the sort of trees that any of us could grow and all of us could accommodate in our gardens. So Bernard Lovell was right.
It'll do. It's time to cut my meadow. Now, normally, meadows are cut for hay any time from the end of June to the middle of September. But I didn't sow it till midsummer, and I wanted to enjoy the flowers for as long as possible. And it doesn't matter cutting long grass in autumn. It doesn't matter what you cut it with either. You could use pair of shears, strimmer, big mower, or as I am, a scythe. And I'm using a scythe because I like them. They're efficient, they're cheap, and they don't use any petrol or make a horrid noise. Now, the important thing here is not to worry if what seemed to be a mixture of healthy flowering plants and quite strong weeds is reduced to a muddy patch. That's the perfect basis for seeds to germinate, for the little perennials that are in there to grow with light and air around them, and next spring that will very quickly cover over, and what will grow back will be the next phase of your wildflower meadow. The important thing is to remove all the top growth and compost it, and that will stop the nutrition going back in the ground, which will only feed the grass, which will edge out the flowers. So remove everything and then leave it alone. Now, the whole wildflower meadow system is based on a very ancient British method of managing hay meadows. But Joe has been to visit a garden in Bristol that couldn't be further removed from the English countryside.
Tropical gardens with their amazing leaves and alien forms transport us to another world. This suburban oasis is the proud creation of gardener Tim Wilmot, a man with a real eye for the exotic.
Wow. Hello, Tim.
How do you do, Joe?
Nice to meet you. This is a real unexpected pleasure. It's a beautiful garden, but I just wouldn't expect to see us here somehow.
When we first came here 23 years ago, this whole area here was an old orchard. I put down lawn for the kids. We had young kids at the time. But then as the kids grew older, I claimed more of the garden for myself and my passion with different types of plants here. I've gone the full hog here, and it's all exotics, so no natives here at all.
Have you got special conditions?
No, there's no special conditions. We've got clay soil. There's no microclimate here. We get bad frosts in the winter. We can get down to -9, -10. But as long as you pick the right sort of plant, they'll survive. Particularly some of the Trachycarpus palms here. They seem to manage fine.
Oh, they're doing more than managing fine. They're thriving. They are loving it here, aren't they?
Love it, yeah. There's a bit of a shelter here with the house and the trees, so they're sheltered from the wind, so the leaves don't look too tatty.
I'm intrigued to see more because it's one of those gardens that really makes you want to explore. Oh, it goes right back.
Yeah, come on through. It's a nice shady area through here.
That's how to plant tree ferns, isn't it? In bulk.
Well, I think it's nice having groups of them, different sizes, it's shady. They love it here.
Those two have caught my eye, those hardy Schefflerers, because
Yes.
I'm quite interested in those. I'm quite interested in getting one myself.
This is Scheffler Impressa,
Yeah.
aptly named. This emanates from high altitude areas of Vietnam.
Yeah.
And you can get them in some specialist nurseries now in the UK. When this was bought, it was a small little plant, but in just the space of 4 or 5 years, you can see the height it's grown up to, and it's a fantastic looking plant. It's very well suited to our climate.
I like that one, but I like that one
That's
even
nice as
more.
well.
That
Yeah.
is gorgeous, isn't it?
Slightly smaller leaf there,
Yeah.
a little bit more elegant, but it's a lovely plant.
Yeah, I think that's the one I've got my eye on, I have
Yeah,
to
it's a
say.
lo-
If you can get away with them here, I can get away with them in London easily.
Easily in London.
They look great next to these bananas, which I have got, which are doing very, very well. But these are particularly healthy specimens. They might, I mean, I guess they like the very moist, damp soil as well.
They do. I prepared this soil before planting, and they've been in the ground now about 10, 11 years, this clump. So I put loads of manure in, dug out all the clay I could.
This is Musa Basju, isn't
Yes,
it?
it's Basju, yeah.
The hardiest of the bananas. Yeah. And I've got this exactly the same. And the fruit is absolutely beautiful. The little bananas, I mean, have you tried to eat one?
No.
They are edible, but they're disgusting.
I think to try and peel it would be too difficult.
It may seem drastic, but with winter approaching, Tim has to trim back these bananas.
There we go.
Harsh weather will kill the stems, so to keep some height and increase the chances of fruit next year, he protects them.
It looks good. You happy? You happy with my workmanship?
I'm going to take a photograph of that. And so this is a slightly different area here, Joe.
Yeah.
This is a little bit more exposed here. And we've got south down there, so there's a very sunny area. And it's an opportunity to grow my agaves here and aloes in this raised bed, which is maybe nearly a metre above the ground, and it's just full of builder's rubble, stones, sand, hardly any soil at all. So it's very, very free drainage. This is what you've got to do. When you see these growing in the wild, they're on mountain sides with hardly any rainfall. There's no way that these plants would survive in the ground in our climate without this kind of preparation.
I love the way they're sort of spidery. They've got to take on a life of their own, don't they?
They are, they're lovely. That needs a lot of protection in the winter. This will get a cage. I've got a DIY cage of different plastic pipes, and then I drape a polytunnel polythene over the top and make sure there's just plenty of ventilation going through there.
Yeah, otherwise they can just get damp and just... well,
you see them getting a bit
rot off.
mouldy.
Yeah. There is an amazing variety of plants here, you know, from the stuff that grows in the wet conditions. You've created dry conditions here. There's many more plants than I would have expected, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, different varieties.
There are.
And all seem to be absolutely thriving.
Most of them are doing all right. There's a few casualties along the way.
Yeah.
I've learnt my lessons, but on the whole, they're doing really well.
Sadly, many gardeners have been put off growing fabulous exotics like these in the UK because they've lost some through the last few harsh winters. But Tim's garden just proves that with a bit of research and picking the right plant for the right situation and some timely winter protection, these plants not just get through the winter, but they positively thrive in this country.
It is amazing how believable the jungle is in that back garden. Well, I've got a rose here. It's a climber called Madame Alfred Carrière. Lovely pink flowers. I only planted it last spring. It's grown really well, but now it's due for pruning. And any climbing rose can be pruned from now through till March, but I like to get them done in October, and they respond very well. Now remember that climbing roses tend to have large flowers and are repeat flowering, whereas ramblers only flower once and have a mass of small flowers.
And ramblers should be pruned immediately after flowering because they produce their flowers on the new growth, whereas climbers produce their flowers on next year's growth. So we can prune them with impunity. Pruning is an opportunity to cut out diseased or damaged stems and to tidy away any unruly shoots. Since mine is only a young plant, I don't need to do anything too radical. Now what I'm doing is trying to divide the existing stems into a framework that is strong, healthy, clearly spaced, and also, as far as possible, and it's not entirely possible, going naturally where the branches want to go. Now, obviously, this stem here is curving back against its direction of growth because there's much more growth on this side than this side. So I'm having to train it across. I'm going to train that one to go straight up. So then there'll be lateral branches that will come, and then this one will go at an angle, and then we've got growth going up through there. Then when I've got that framework, I can start refining it to produce the side shoots that will produce the flowers. Now this was only planted last year, so it's a young plant. But if it was an established climber, I would be removing up to a third of all the shoots every year, and certainly one or two of the older ones. So the plant is constantly renewing itself, getting new vigor, because it's that new, fresh growth that will bear most roses. Okay, I've got a basic framework. Now the thing to do is to cut back the laterals. And the laterals are, for example, along here. There's the main stem growing along here. This is a lateral. This is a lateral. This is a lateral. Now these would bear flowers if this was spring, and if we have a very mild autumn, they might even produce another one. But I want to cut those back so they regrow upwards, up the wall, smothered with flowers. Okay, that will do. Fundamentally, I've got a strong framework with the laterals cut back, and it's also protected, tied in. Doesn't matter what weather we get, that will be perfectly happy. Now, even if you're not pruning roses, here are some other jobs you can be doing this weekend. If any pots are left out over winter, there's a real risk of them becoming waterlogged. Then, if we get cold weather and they freeze, both the plant and the pot can be damaged. So lift the pots up clear of the ground. This will improve the drainage and do a lot to protect your precious pot and your precious plant. Tender plants must be kept frost-free, but greenhouse space can be at a premium, and anyway, heating is expensive. Another way is to line the inside of a cold frame or a box with polystyrene sheeting, which you can buy from a builder's merchant. Cut it to fit. You need a clear top, but that can be bubble wrapped if the weather gets very cold. Now is a good time to take hardwood cuttings from soft fruit like these gooseberries. Choose nice straight stems about 6 to 8 inches long. Strip off the lower leaves and bury them to at least half their length in well-drained soil, somewhere where they won't be disturbed for the next 12 months. The pond is looking surprisingly good still. Look, there's still a water lily bud and even another one that might come through if the sun shines. But it's important to get in and start to clear out the pond before it gets too bad. Now, the easiest way to do it on anything but the smallest pond is get in there and gently wade about. This is a wildlife pond. And although I want it to look good, its role as encouraging and supporting a whole range of wildlife is just as important as the flowers that we gardeners admire. So by gently starting to tidy up, we're not shocking the whole system. Just start to scoop up a little bit of the debris on the surface, some of the fallen leaves, and then start to thin some of the extraneous growth. Because what we don't want is dead and rotting vegetation falling to the bottom of the pond, because that will upset the balance of the nutrients, because as they decompose, they will cause too much nutrients in the water. So the biggest difference that the pond has made to Longmeadow is we've always had lots of toads, but now we have masses of frogs as well. Way! Nearly a good moment. Right, I'm going to gently pull away some of the water mint. Just thin it out a little. Oh, it smells lovely. Now I'm leaving everything I'm taking out on the side. That means that as the water drains out, all the living creatures, from the smallest to the odd frog that's bound up in there, can go back into the pond and won't be left high and dry or chucked on the compost heap, which is where it will go in a day. Well, I'm going to stay gentle about this. One near miss is enough in cold October water. But that's it for this week. I'll see you back here at Longmeadow next Friday, but until then, goodbye. Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. It's been a gentle autumn. Not spectacular, but not too cold, not too wet. Summer has just slowly subsided. That's it, really. Winter is inevitable. And I'm dismantling the garden, unravelling it from its summer clothes and putting it to bed. Carol visits a garden with an astonishing collection of Michaelmas daisies and revels in their late-season brilliance.
It's such a simple, everyday sort of flower, and yet these vivid blues and magentas paint the garden.
We visit a giant veg grower with a scarily large pumpkin.
Why I like growing giant veg is when you get it on the show bench, the mums and dads and the kiddies come round, and the kiddies go, "Oh, look at that. There's nothing better."
And as well as deconstructing the garden, I should be preparing for spring by sowing some broad beans. There's always a tipping point in the garden. Things like the Cosmos Purity are still looking really good. But some borders reach a point where they just look tired and jaded, and you need to cut your losses and say, that's it. And that's what I'm going to do here. You can see that the sunflowers are looking miserable. They're all mouldy. There are a few seeds, which we can obviously keep for the birds, but I want to clear away what has done its stuff. And that will create room so I can plant some wallflowers. Ow! Got a thorn in my hand. It always feels a little bit painful to remove plants that have still got some life in them, and the Cosmos would go on producing flowers, but they've lost their heart. And funnily enough, the ones in the border behind me, which is a twin border, planted the same, are still doing fine. I wouldn't remove those. But there remains the question, I need space to plant wallflowers, because if I don't get them in the ground now, they won't develop properly and they won't flower for me as I want them to next spring. And I've still got plenty of other things that I won't take out. There's the salvia, there's phlox, those can stay in. But there's room now for for me to get my wallflowers in amongst them. So it's a trade-off. I lose a bit of cosmos and gain a lot of wallflower. Now, a lot of wallflower looks like this at this time of year. And these are really cheap. There were 10 plants for a couple of quid. And I love the way that you can buy them in this old-fashioned way, just wrapped up in damp newspaper. They're a member of the brassica family, so they're cabbages, essentially. And I usually grow them myself from seed, but this year, the ones I grew started flowering in August. And they've been flowering solidly since then. And I suspect that they won't flower for me next spring. So I bought a batch of seedlings, which is a very cheap, easy way to do it. And you can see that they're grown in soil. And you separate them out, and these are nice, healthy plants. Now, the key to wallflowers, when you buy them bare root like this, is buy them, go straight home, and plant them straight away. Don't leave them hanging around, because they will suffer. So I want to get all of these in the ground within the next half hour. Now, there's no special technique to planting them, except to remember that they are a member of the brassica family, so they don't really like acidic soil. So if you've got very acidic soil, that means soil that grows rhododendrons and heathers and camellias easily, it's a good idea to lime the soil a little bit, and you can either buy lime to do that, or if you've got a wood fire, wood ash will do the job as well. So just spread that a couple of weeks before you plant the wallflowers, and that will help them. Other than that, bung them in the ground. It's easy. Now, I've been talking about wallflowers as though that covered them all. These are actually wallflower primrose bedder, and the bedder series is really good. They are reliable plants. They're not the biggest wallflowers you can buy, but they're strong. And what you're looking for when you buy a wallflower is a nice, strong, bushy plant at this time of year. If it's tall and floppy, that's not such a good sign. They have that lovely combination of being an old-fashioned plant. You knew that your grandparents grew them and enjoyed them in the same way, but they've never gone out of fashion. Also, don't forget, wallflowers have one of the best scents of any flower at any time of year. They're used for bedding in a very old-fashioned way, but I like them in a combination with tulips. Wallflowers and tulips are just a perfect combination, coming to their best round about mid-April to mid-May. It's a good idea to get wallflowers in October, if you can, because that gives them a chance to establish their roots while the soil is still reasonably warm. They're tough plants. You needn't worry about this too much. They're not going to die of cold, but you do want a nice, strong plant when you go into spring. It's also a good idea to plant your wallflowers before you plant your tulips. And that is for the most obvious reason of all. It means that you're less likely to dig up the tulip bulbs as you go along. And anyway, I like to leave tulip planting till November. Now, I say that the garden is folding in upon itself, but of course there are exceptions that gloriously break that rule. And Michaelmas daisies are amongst the best of them. Of course, Michaelmas Day is September the 29th, which is when they really hit their stride, and they go on striding without break until they're blasted by frost. And Carol has been to Malvern to see a fabulous collection of Michaelmas daisies.
I love Michaelmas daisies. Just the very sight of them, though, has this kind of two-sided effect. On the one hand, they remind you that autumn's sliding gradually into winter. On the other hand, there's this reprise of the summer, these vivid blues and magentas that paint the garden, and this incredible energy and dynamism that they bring. It's such a simple, everyday sort of flower, and yet that familiarity belies the fact that it has an incredibly complex history. Generations of men and women have devoted their entire lives to its culture, its development and to ensuring its preservation so that we can grow it in all its myriad forms in our gardens. Nowadays, the charity Plant Heritage help conserve plants like these asters in national collections. Paul Picton and his family look after this one. There are more than 600 experts and enthusiasts like the Pictons safeguarding the future of our garden heritage by running them. It is an absolute wow, all this scintillating colour, isn't it? It's brilliant.
Well, here you've got a historical collection of all the varieties that breeders in England raised of the Novi Belgii or New York Michaelmas daisy over a period of 50 or 60 years.
What we all know as Michaelmas daisies.
And love, I hope.
Oh, no, how could you not love them? How could you not?
Just look at the range of colour you've got in there, the range of shapes of the sprays of the different varieties, and the heights from little short things up to something which might be 5 or 6 feet high.
How did the whole story start?
Yes, it happened very slowly, but it started way back at the end of the 19th century when a man called Ernest Ballard got keen on growing Michaelmas daisies in his garden. And he thought, well, I can improve this plant and turn it into an even better garden flower if I put some work into it.
Yes.
His biggest success was one called Beauty of Coal, which won an award for him at the RHS trials in 1905.
Ernest Ballard wanted a bolder aster with an abundance of petals. Each new variety he bred, he named after a member of the family. Anita, a simple flower with a pure colour, followed by Ada with more petals, and finally Mary Ballard, the pinnacle of what he was aiming for. But how did the Picton family come to get involved with the Ballards?
Well, it's my father who first got involved. He got offered a job here by Ernest Ballard to come and manage the nursery just after the Second World War.
I suppose those vivid, bright colours were just what people needed.
The bright colours, they were dying for that after the austerity of the war years. They needed colour.
Yeah. And what is it you love so much about
Well,
Michaelmas
what I
daisies?
love is the versatility of these plants. You can have the soft colours, which is especially seen in the smaller flowered Michaelmas daisies, and it's almost as if you can pull down stars from heaven and put them into these great big clouds in your garden.
Poetically put, the Milky Way come down.
The Milky Way come down.
The next generation of the Picton family has grown up with asters. Helen Picton is taking over the reins from her parents. What's this lovely deep purple one?
This is actually one that my father bred, and it's named for me, Helen Picton, when I was smaller and cuter. And it was work that he was trying to do to get shorter, more compact New Englands, because an awful lot of them are very tall.
Yeah.
There isn't always space for them in people's gardens, so it's nice to try and work towards getting shorter ones.
Yeah. I love Novi Anglii because they're fairly disease-free, aren't they?
Yes, that's their biggest advantage, really, is that they're mildew resistant. They have very few problems. They're good, tough plants, but they're actually surprisingly greedy. So it's worthwhile giving them some form of feed, particularly in the spring. And we find that doing this using a mulch is very helpful. The mulch actually helps reduce moisture loss when we do get a hot, dry summer, which happens sometimes.
Yeah.
And of course, with the Novi Belgias, this is an added bonus in that it helps stop them from getting so stressed. And of course, when they aren't stressed, they are much more disease resistant.
This whole garden extols the aster in all its forms and in these beautiful combinations all around the garden. Here, an old aster, Arcturus, with these deep purple flowers, accompanies a pale pink one. This is Les Moutiers. It's a sort of aster you see rambling around on railway embankments, perfectly at home here, alongside brilliant splashes of rudbeckia. And in the centre, Aster Novi Anglii Helen Picton, a fitting tribute to a wonderful family of plants and a marvellous family of plants people.
At this time of year, there's an awful lot of material coming out of the borders for the compost heap. That's great. The slight problem is that a lot of it tends to be quite dry and woody and slow to decompose, particularly as we're going into winter. So this is where a shredder comes into its own. And if you haven't got a shredder, if it's relatively soft material, you could try mowing it. And failing that, a club hammer, bashing stems of sunflowers or cabbages or anything that's really slow to break down, transforms the speed that it turns into compost. Now, one of the ironies here at Longmeadow is we put in paths because the ground gets so wet. And hard paths mean we can wheelbarrows and walk around without sloshing through mud all the time. But great chunks of our paths remain really wet and slippery for weeks, if not months of the year. And that's because they get an algae buildup. And you get that on any surface. It could be a path, it could be a patio, decking, even garden furniture, where you have a wet surface that's in shade for a lot of the time. And then the algae never really disappears. Where we get bright sunshine and hot weather, it more or less all clears up. But as soon as we have a bit of rain, it comes back. And you get this stupid situation of, instead of walking on the hard path, you walk on the grass because it's less slippery. Now, you can deal with this. You can brush on mixtures, some which I've used for years, some which are brand new, some which are organic, some which are non-organic. Brush them on. That will destroy the algae. The slight problem with that is if it destroys algae, it can also damage plants either side of the path. So the simplest way to go about it is simply blast it off. You could do it with a strong hose if you have it, but a pressure washer is ideal. And you don't have to own one. You can hire pressure washers from about 30 quid for a weekend. The beauty of that is it's pure water, not using a huge amount of water either, but getting into every nook and cranny and just simply knocking the algae out the way. I would say pressure washers work by electricity, electricity plus water, plus being outside. Be a bit careful. If you've got a connection of any kind, cover it so it's waterproof. Other than that, it's dead easy. When you're directing the jet, make sure it's at a nice shallow angle, otherwise you simply rip the grouting out in between the bricks or the stones. The other thing is it does make a mess. Water goes everywhere, so just be sure that you've got somewhere for the water to move to. But it works. It feels counterintuitive to add water to a damp path, but that is now nice and grippy. Now, you may not have slippery paths, so you don't need to blast them with a pressure washer. But here are some other things that you can be doing this weekend. Now is the perfect time to apply grease bands to fruit trees. This will stop damage by the caterpillars of a number of different moths next spring and summer. The females can't fly, so they climb up the trees via the trunk. And a grease band, either bought as a band that you tie onto the tree, or of grease painted directly onto the trunk, will form a barrier that they can't pass. Chilies are delicious when fully ripe and eaten fresh. However, if you have a surplus, pick the ripe ones as soon as they're ready, and that will encourage more fruiting. And to store them, dry them thoroughly. I use a basket on a windowsill. And then when they're thoroughly dry, they can be stored in a sealed jar and will keep for years. The imperial fritillary flowers in spring and is one of the most exotic and dramatic plants of any season. The bulb is large and has a hole, like a cored apple, running through it. One side is usually flattened, so you plant it on its side like that. Dig a really generous hole
12 inches isn't too deep, and put plenty of grit underneath it. Place the bulb on its side and then backfill, marking the spot where you planted it, and it should flower for you for the next 10 to 20 years.
Come on. Come on, Nige. Come on, come here. You want a carrot? You may not like it. That's not a very good carrot. These aren't too bad. At this time of year, you often see holes in carrots, which are carrot fly. The grubs hatch out and then feed off the roots. But yeah, you can see there, we've got the telltale runnels. Sometimes they go right through it. But those are fine, and those were sown in spring, so all summer we've been picking these and they're still going strong, but they're not going to win any prizes. These are grown solely for taste. However, there are a group of vegetable growers that passionately compete in growing the biggest vegetables they possibly can. At this time of year, of course, it's pumpkins that dominate that scene. And we went along to Wellingborough to see a giant pumpkin unveiled, ready for competition.
Right, today's the day, folks. Let's have a look what we got underneath here. Look at this little beauty. This plant has been growing now for about 4.5 months, and this is the size we've ended up with. Some of these pumpkins will grow quite a bit bigger than this one. You can see them growing most days. What I sometimes do is I put a cane each side of the growing pumpkin, and you can see the sticks moving apart. Why I like growing giant veg is, first of all, the challenge of being able to do it. And then, when you get it on the show bench, the mums and dads and the kiddies come around, and the kiddies go, "Oh, look at that." There's nothing better. The people that grow the big veg, most of us are pretty eccentric, because I'm afraid you've got to be. Everybody waits for everybody else to come to the shows to see what they're unloading out of the back of their truck. And some are cursing underneath their breath because somebody got something better than they have. But it's just one big happy family, really. With growing this giant veg, you've got to have the right seed. Pumpkins are like racehorses. They've got their own breeding format. When they buy the seed, especially if you buy a seed from America, it can cost $400 or $500 for one seed. But with that seed, there will come a pedigree. It isn't always the biggest is the heaviest. You know, it can be the longest marrow or it can be the fattest marrow, and then you get a little tiddler, put it by the side of it, and it weighs twice as heavy because the skin is twice as thick. One of the things we all say, the weighing scales doesn't lie, the measuring tape doesn't lie. I've got about 15 cabbage altogether growing, and you know, this is just a nice one for you to have a look at. I think this is going to be a showstopper. These are held up by car tyres, because if you didn't, they get so top heavy that they'll fall over and go mouldy underneath, and that allows the air to flow around them so they stay nice and clean. And my main tip with cabbage and most of my veg, I grow them in rhubarb. I'm the first person to tell you I like rhubarb crumble, I like rhubarb and custard, and I like stewed rhubarb as well. But pieces I don't use, I put the chopped rhubarb in the bottom of the hole, put any fertiliser in the bottom of the hole, fill it back in, then I plant my plant on the top. And the rhubarb rots down and stops any bugs that are in the ground attacking the roots from underneath. 69 centimetres. Yeah, not too bad. With giant beans, it's the length. Put it on the show bench, and the longest one's a winner. And let's hope it's going to be the longest one.
All right, yeah.
One of the most asked questions is, can you eat them? Which you can.
That should do it.
the wife says, oh, Clive, go and cut a cabbage, then I cut it into 4 or 5 pieces, put it into some plastic bags, and then as I'm going up and down the street, I hand a few pieces into the neighbours, so everybody's eating cabbage. There's no way, you know, on God's earth I can pick this stuff up myself.
Right, careful now, don't catch hold of that stem.
So when I'm doing the show, I need some help. All right, that's it for now. So off I go and let's see if we do any good at the show.
Well, big as it was, it turns out that Clive's pumpkin wasn't the biggest in the show, so he didn't win that prize, but he did win others for other vegetables. Now, this time of year, it's traditional to sow some broad beans. And it's something actually I've stopped doing in recent years because they really suffered from the wet and the poor drainage we have here. But now I've got these lovely raised beds, which have done really well this summer. I'm going to go back and give it a go. The reason for sowing broad beans in autumn is not so much because they need it, but because it will give you an earlier picking. So the idea is to sow some now, some as early as you can get on the soil in the spring, could be February, could be March, and then another batch in April or even May. So you spread the broad bean season and you get 3 lots of pickings, and you can use 3 different varieties. But at this time of year, you really do want to go for aqua dulce. That is the traditional one. It's hardier and adapts better to the slow-growing, cold conditions that it's bound to find itself in. A really delicate, small broad bean, eaten not really much bigger than a generous pea, is delicious, really tasty, and the texture is beautiful. So to get some in now, so we've got them early, sort of mid to the end of May, is something to really look forward to. And I'm just going to sow a few. So what I'm looking for is just one picking perhaps, just 1 or 2 meals next May, rather than waiting till June for the spring batch to come through. Prepare the soil. The soil here is fantastic in the raised bed. Certainly haven't dug it. There's no need to do that at all. And I'll just pop the seeds in. They're very satisfactory seeds, broad beans, because they're so big. They're lovely pebble-like objects in your hand. And just push them in the ground in rows. We'll mark the rows up like that. And I would just say that if you've got raised beds of any kind, the only really important rule is never, ever, ever tread on them. Because that's the whole point of a raised bed, is to keep the soil nice and open and in good heart. So use a board and just push the beans in. And I would say about 9-inch spacing is fine in double rows. Now, I find that you may have to support each individual bean, because what happens is they grow and then they start to curl and twist and you get these sort of rather wobbly, contorted beans. And particularly if the slugs have had a go at them, where the stems have been weakened, then they're more inclined to bend. So a small bamboo, until they start growing strongly, is not a bad idea. The other problem to watch out for is mice eating the seeds before they germinate. I've never actually had to worry about that here, but I know that they can be a real issue. And I don't know what to do about it. Cats, I suppose. Okay, that's it. That's broad beans in the ground, ready for a delicious meal or two next May. That's the end of today's programme, but we'll be back here at Longmeadow next time. So I'll see you then. Bye-bye.